says record. So this is the third tape, and today you're going to talk about early years with Dad, and maybe a bit of his family too.
Well, the early years, as far as Dad is concerned, you will have to ask Christine. She has more information on that than what I have. All I know is that Dad was born in Luton, but they lived in Welwyn Garden City before they moved to London. His father was a printer, so was the family. The Khan family was connected to print one way and another. His grandfather, in other words, his father's father, was a docker. They lived in Hackney. There were quite a few children there, but I think eventually it turned into Bert, the eldest, I think. Bert, George, Dad's father. Who else was there? Somebody who got killed during the war. The First War.
That would be Thomas Reeves or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then there was a woman who, it has been whispered and said that she was actually not his sister, but the sister, but the half sister. That father came home drunk and they produced a kid, and they tried to get rid of it and didn't quite manage it, and she was damaged. So they always knew when they went to home, even Dad when he went home, she was sitting in a corner somewhere and was counting whatever. She was very much accepted for being in the family. She was never left out. Dad didn't tell me much more about what happened. All I know was that they were all anti-war, and even in the First World War, his father and Bert. I think George too went into prison because they wouldn't be conscripted. His mother was a Sunday school teacher. She lived not far from in Hackney as well.
What was his mother's name? It was Emily, was it?
Emily, yeah.
She's going to call this dog off the floor. Sasha, come here. Sasha, come here. Come on. Right, we've sat the dog down in its bed. We'll carry on.
What I suggest is that Mike, George's son, and John Khan, they both have been investigating the family tree, and they most probably will be able to tell you more about that background there. I know that his mother had a big family, and there are still some people floating about, but we've lost touch with them now. But there were aunts and uncles and cousins. But of course, most of them will have gone by now.
Mm.
And the youngsters sort of haven't kept up anymore. They have their own families and developed their own families as well.
So tell us about you and Dad.
What about me and Dad? Well, we met at Peacehaven. Dad was very strong on international peace, and so we lived in the same complex. We didn't live in the same house. I was working at Peacehaven, having gone home a couple of times, and they sent me a ticket afterwards to come back.
Oh, you went back to Germany?
I went back to Germany, and I wasn't home 3 days, and I had a ticket, please come back. In those days I needed permits, working permits. They were there as well. So I went back again every time. But initially I didn't have anything very much to do with Dad. We were in groups, and we would sit around in the lounge, very old-fashioned fireplace, and fairly worn chairs. We would debate, and it gradually grew. That we had more and more to do, and eventually we found one another. Tom, his father had died the year before, so I met up with Daisy and Les and Winnie at one of our carnivals. Acton at a carnival, and Peacehaven had a float, and we were all in our national costumes on this float. And I can remember that they had trolley buses there, so there were lines, electric lines ahead, and we had a globe on a big pole. And then we got to the bridge. There was a bridge, and somebody called Gabby and I, we were standing there, and then we saw this bridge car, and we thought that pole is touching the wires. And we stood there with our mouths wide open, and we just about made it. What we would all have been later.
That would have been the end of that.
That would have been the end of quite a few of us. Anyway, they seemed to enjoy coming for tea on a Sunday afternoon and things like that. And when Bill was in London, he went home most weekends. And eventually he took me to Northampton and introduced me to his friends there. He had friends who were lecturers at the college, because Northampton was a shoemaking town. And they were teaching anything about leather and shoes, and so I got sort of sucked into that. And then I met Christine, and Christine came to Peacehaven, and she stayed there for a weekend with her then boyfriend, and eventually I'd had enough of Peacehaven, and I applied for a job as an assistant matron in an old people's home, which was in Barnet, but in North Barnet, almost Potter's Bar. And that was more my forte, to actually manage rather than just cook. I had enough cooking then. The matron was very much went on matron's lines. The matron was taken ill, she had to have an operation, and I was left to my own devices there. There were plenty of staff. And I must have been there about a year and a bit, and then Dad decided he's going to get the divorce after all.
So were you seeing him while you were there?
Yes. He used to come in the evenings when I was in London. And
You keep talking, Mother, while I tell this dog to pack it in. Right. Stay there, don't move. This bit will be edited out of the film later. You rotten dog. You stay there now, and you do not move again. Right.
anyway, the matron didn't come back. Somebody else came in. And by then we decided to get married. I'd met plenty of times with Daisy and Les, and Winnie used to live with them.
Where did they live at the time?
St John's Road in Seven Kings. I used to live there, the house there. Bit sort of funny thing, Les had a stepmother because his father married a second time, but he was old. But I can't remember her name, but he met her in an old people's daycare centre or something. And they sort of were turtling. It was quite funny, actually. And she used to spend a lot of time with Daisy when he died. But sort of that was another bit of an added amusement. When we used to spend an evening with Daisy and Les, sort of most weekends. We used to play cards. And used to do a bit of debating. I called it debating then, I didn't call it arguing. But Dad and Winnie would, they wouldn't get on with one another. They would disagree most of the time. And Daisy used to call them to heel every now and again. She was the one who controlled those two, that it didn't get out of hand. But they used to be both strongly argue over all sorts of silly things. But I was told that it was a bit of history because Winnie was so much younger than Dad. And he used to call her juvenile. And he used to say, I'm not a juvenile.
Do you mean juvenile or juvenile?
Juvenile. That sort of argument sort of carried on all the time. We were looking for a place to live, and Dad went to some estate agent, but I never really cared for what we found. He did have a house in Barkingside, which he just sold.
That was where he lived with Grace and Christine.
Yeah.
What was the name of the road? Can we remember the name of the road?
Yes, we can. Carling Ken, what is it? Where Frida lives.
I know, I'm thinking. Clayhall Avenue.
Clayhall Avenue. The White House in Clayhall Avenue. He'd only just sold it. And
I suppose that was part of the settlement with Grace, was it?
Yeah. What next?
So you were looking for a house.
And then Dad found this area in Chigwell where they were building Chigwell Park Drive. They'd the builder had started before the war. One road had to stop, but after the war he continued. So we had Chigwell Park Drive as the wide, big road. Well, we had a look there, and there were 3 houses for sale. One was almost ready, but we were told that there would be another road at the back of it, and we didn't know what was going to be built there. We should be going over the other side, and that's why we had to wait, because what we bought was struggle. There was nothing there.
Right, but because you bought on the Coolgardie Avenue side, you knew what you
What we were backing
backing
onto.
onto. Because Coolgardie Avenue was already there.
Yeah, that was built before the war. Honeysets had just moved in, and that was as far as the buildings were concerned on that side, and over the other side it finished next door to where Yvonne now lives, in Brian. But that was sold because a golf player had bought it, and they had lots of alterations there. So, in fact, the house was ready, almost ready, when we got married in October.
What year?
56. Yes, you were born in 57, weren't you? I hurt my back, and I had to go on the board next to the bed for a while. And the painter was still in the house, and they were still bashing about, and number 21 wasn't occupied then. And everybody came and helped with laying out the garden. Put a concrete path there.
And who was everyone?
Les and friends of Dad. They all sort of turned up, turfing it as well. We grew potatoes and tomatoes, and at the bottom, halfway up beyond the path. You did those things in those days, and everybody brought you plants. So for years and years we had plants which came back every year. And we would say, oh, these come from here and these come from there. Anyway, we decided we start a family straight away. And my mother and father didn't come to the wedding because we didn't know what to do with them, where to put them in because the house was barely habitable. You know, we had no furniture, so to speak, of no floor covering. All these things came afterwards. But by Christmas, we was halfway civilized. And that's when they came for the first time. Peaceful. It was peaceful at first.
They all got on together to start with.
Yes. Well, Bill had been to Hanover with me.
Right.
Or rather, he followed me. I had a break and went home, and he came and had spent a holiday with us in Hanover. And then Karin was born in August. By then, we had we had a coal fire We had a boiler which was fed by coal and made a lot of dirt, but made a nice hot water, so we put some radiators on it, and then the water was never hot anymore after that, because it wasn't very scientifically put in.
Mm.
It always impressed me, or I remember as well, when the house was built, the outside of the house, the red bricks inside, there weren't many breeze blocks there, it was solid
Yeah.
bricks, well built. And when I see those pictures the other day when
What they're doing to it now.
it breaks my heart. Karen came very quickly. We had apples. We had apples, we had apples, we had apples. And I was cooking apples in the pressure cooker and I had it up the ceiling. That night she was born ever so quickly.
In hospital.
In hospital.
Which
in
hospital?
One state hospital was then a proper hospital. And she started off with being jaundiced, then wouldn't feed, and then I got sent home with her, and then the fun began. She wouldn't sleep.
Sounds a lot like William, really.
She wouldn't sleep. She didn't cry, but I was so worried because the house was not warm enough. By then we had electric central heating in. But it was very unsatisfactory, very unscientific. And then she was taken ill, and at the time we had the Russian flu epidemic, so the doctor who came, our doctor was ill as well. The doctor who came, who was hardly still on his feet, said it was Russian flu, not to worry. And then she had seizures, and then we took her to one state hospital. And we nearly got sent home again, because then they were saying it was a feeding problem. But the matron there, in those days you still had matrons, said you stay. And then things happened very quickly. They whipped her away and checked her and didn't quite know what it was, but they started her on blood transfusions. Couldn't find a vein, so they actually put the transfusion into the veins in there. So they shaved her up there. So she had a nice little ponytail and bare at the front. I spent almost 24 hours in the hospital for about a fortnight because the nurses were ill. It was a terrible time at the time. And then we were sent home. And the very first night she kept us awake. So we got the doctor in, Dr. Finlay incidentally. And that was the father who came, and he said they wouldn't send her home if they weren't satisfied that she was over. She had some antibiotics in those days, they were only just about. And then she developed and grew. That was you.
When did they actually know that it was meningitis?
They didn't. It was only through, because we had to go for check-ups with her. It was at least a couple of years later.
Oh, right.
But they decided that's what it was.
That's what it was.
We had neighbours, the Honeysets next door to us, and they had a daughter who was a year older than Karin, and she would amuse herself with Karin.
Which side did the Honeysets live?
kitchen side,
Right. Down the road, number 25.
number 25. And a year later, almost a year later, Richard was born. So Karin played, those three played quite a bit together when they were getting on. We were advised, because Karin wouldn't talk, we were advised to send her to nursery school, so she wasn't 3 when she went to nursery school. And she started talking, and she's never stopped since. So she was less damaged than it was initially feared, because she had a terrific vocabulary that she stored and came out with it once she had to make herself understood. What are you trying to do?
I'm struggling with the dog again because it insists on making noises and leaving
Well,
its
she
bed.
doesn't know that she's not supposed to
Not
be.
behaving, and she knows she's supposed to stay in the bed. Now, you sit there, Sasha. Don't move. Stay.
Dad went to work every day in London. That's why he moved to London, because the Belmont Press was in Northampton, because they were most of his customers. He still had from before the war lots of trade unions, because the printing firm he used to work for was socialist, and they'd gone after the war, and Dad picked up most of the customers he had before.
So we didn't travel to Northampton very much?
Weekends. We used to go every week, most weekends, if not every weekend, but 1 in 3, 1 in 4. And I used to hate coming home because I used to be sick by the time I came
It
home.
must have been a really, really difficult drive in those days. I mean, these days it's M25 and the M1.
Well, the M1 was built, there was a stretch built where it was really very dangerous initially, and then the M1 was built, but we had to get past that. It took some years before it was done.
So how long did it take you to drive from
2
Chigwell
hours.
to Northampton? 2
2
hours.
But Dad had friends there, and we used to usually spend time with them. But you know, made it better that I didn't hang about while he had his meetings and his business discussions. I was lying at the back seat of the car and Bill was driving. He must have sometimes felt really angry because he got nothing out of me because I was trying to sleep so I wouldn't be sick. I don't know what followed next. But every weekend we were at home. We had visitors. We entertained such a lot. And they used to stand. Winnie had a boyfriend. And Winnie would stay with us, and the boyfriend would stay with us, and the father would stay in the lounge, and everybody else who smoked went in the kitchen. And I was trying to feed them and cook and muck about, and they were all having big discussions in the kitchen, and the kitchen wasn't that big. But I can remember John Dickens and Eileen and Aileen and Uncle Bert and both green, and they were all squashed in the kitchen, and there was the father sitting in the best armchair in the big lounge all by himself with the women. The funny thing was this bloke, but this boyfriend eventually married somebody else.
Oh, Auntie Winnie's boyfriend.
Yeah, Ken. Bloody cheeky, he used her while so he could get out from under his father's feet, and then married somebody else with a kid, and father was still alive. And he'd always said he wouldn't get married while his father was alive.
So you haven't got too high an opinion of him now?
No, not now, because he hurt Winnie. The funniest thing was when they used to go on holiday together, and he had a Morris Minor, and the Morris Minor had a feather duster, so to speak. He would polish and look after him, and when they used to go, he would warn Winnie not to have too much luggage, so as not to overload this blooming car.
Right.
He was really playing the macho, and Winnie allowed herself to be used like that, but eventually it fizzled out. By then Winnie had moved to Leytonstone. The year you were born, Tom, the following Christmas, Daisy got taken ill, and it was found that she had a tumour, brain tumour, and she died just after Christmas. They'd moved to the south coast now. Haywards Heath they moved to, just before you were born, and they'd come up to London because Uncle Bert was 80, and the whole Khan family and Green family was invited to the something rooms, convent rooms, so that I was to have you at home. The midwife promised she'd get me there. She did. Everybody looked at me every 5 minutes. You all right? You all right? You all right? Yes, I was all right. We came home fairly late. Christine was looking after Carvin at the time. And the following late afternoon, Daisy was having headaches, and they decided they were going home. And they hadn't gone home properly when you were born, from the time they left to get back to Haywards Heath in that short time you were born, and it was snowing. They had to push the midwife's car up Chigwell Park Drive because it was so bad with snow by then. Daisy died in the old year.
28th.
Right. Now Daisy was somebody who had a terrific influence on the Khan family. She sort of made sure that things didn't get out of hand. She was playing tennis, and she wasn't the lightweight, but she was always playing tennis competitions, and in fact most of the Khan family were playing tennis. You know, that sort of was a middle class, that from working class, you slipped into middle class, and we played tennis. That was the impression I had. But it was, I don't know, but I mean, Ernie was playing tennis, who was a cousin of Dad's from the mother's side. Now I have absolutely no information on Dad's mother's, anything concrete. I know they were relatives, I know we saw them while Daisy was still alive, but after that things sort of seemed to fizzle out.
Shall we stop there for now? Because I think the tape will fizzle out in a minute if we're not careful.
Okay.
We don't want to stop halfway through. Alright?
Okay.